The Lord of the Rings Tales of Middle-earth was the first product that took the form of a fully fleshed out set with universes beyond. It was mostly praised as a tasteful and proper usage of an IP within Magic the Gathering. It added a ton of new cards, and a lot of them saw play in many different formats. Off the top of my head, things like Land Cyclers, Orcish Bowmasters, Cat Combo Shenanigans, Delighted Halfling, and Flame of Anor all saw play in some regard. But there is one thing in Lord of the Rings, an object so iconic, so important to the series, that a card of it was not only assumed, but expected. A card that grew and grew in meta percentage until players were practically begging for its banning. It's time to talk about the rise, history, and fall of the One Ring. On March 13th, 2023, the One Ring was spoiled to the MTG community. For those who somehow missed this abomination of a card, the One Ring is a 4-mana legendary artifact with Indestructible that reads, when it enters, if you cast it, you gain protection from everything until your next turn. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose a life for each bird encounter on the ring. Finally, you can tap and put a bird encounter on the ring to draw a card for each bird encounter on it. Unsurprisingly, a lot of the comments on the post for this card were buzzing with excitement about EDH. A 4-mana artifact that drew cards at the cost of life? This will go perfect in my mono-white life gain commander deck. Jokes aside, the community didn't seem particularly excited about the card in modern or other Eternal formats. Well, at least at first glance, this doesn't seem broken in non-EDH formats, so that's nice. As a fellow Tron player, I doubt this will be a good fit for the deck. Stasis Coffin has a similar effect, but is not seeing any play in the sideboard. It doesn't draw cards, but the effect can be delayed if your opponent doesn't have lethal, or recurred if Karn is left standing. If your entire sideboard can't save you, then it's most likely 1 extra turn or 3 extra cards can't save you either. Instant Commander staple, maybe not modern playable though. I feel like this confirms Lord of the Rings won't be the MH3 some people were hoping or fearing for. While it is fun to look back at these comments in hindsight, as one Redditor put it, we Magic players are incredible at judging the power level of spoilers. So in fairness to all of these posts I showed, let me share one of my own personal blunders. When Ledger Shredder had just come out, I didn't think it was very good. I instead thought Scheming Fence was going to be the broken card out of New Capenna, so instead of trading for Ledger Shredders when they were cheap, I instead traded for 10 Scheming Fences. Yeah, any day now. My own personal misfortune aside, on June 23rd, 2023, The Lord of the Rings Tales of Middle-earth released, and the One Ring immediately saw tinkering. While some people didn't think it was great in Tron, players quickly realized after testing that it was a solid tool to help dig themselves out of trouble and keep themselves alive. In Breach decks, you could loop the One Ring with Emery to lock your opponent and continue drawing cards if they couldn't interact with it. And you could negate its downside by playing another and sacrificing the one with bird encounters on it to the legend rule. 4-color control, Yawgmoth, Amulet Titan, and Valakut were just a few examples of some of the archetypes running it. Was the card a new mainstay, or were brewers just testing any card with a mana value lower than 5? This could all just be a fad, and content creators are no stranger to trying new cards for the sake of views. How much of this was real? 1 month later, we got our answer at Pro Tour Barcelona. Of the 269 decks in the event, 111 ran the One Ring. 42%. Rakdos Scam won overall, but Tron was the big winner of this event, getting 3 top 8 finishes. Even with this showing meta percentage and continued prominence, Wizards of the Coast hesitated to ban the One Ring. After all, the ring to rule them all had counters. The One Ring's strong abilities that slotted into slower, grindier, big mana, or mid-range decks in the format had some counters. The big 3 were Scam, Rhinos, and Nadu, kind of. So let's start with Scam. Rakdos Scam was a deck that played a solid mid-range plan. It ran the best creatures and removal spells in its colors and played a grindy strategy. The deck also ran 2 pitch elementals, Fury and Grief, alongside cards like Not Dead After All. This meant the deck could evoke an elemental, sacrifice it, and bring it back immediately, all for 1 mana. While Fury had to be more reactive, since if you wanted max value there had to be targets to remove, a 3/3 double striker on turn 1 was lethal against the right decks. Grief, on the other hand, could be played turn 1 every game for its maximum value, ripping 2 non-lands from your opponent for just a single mana. This was pretty crippling against ring decks, since you could just take their early plays or just take the ring, and then let your more traditional plan clean up from there. Due to the deck's consistency, alongside its explosive ability to clear boards or double Thoughtseize somebody, something had to be done. On December 4th, 2023, Fury was banned in Modern, and the community collectively agreed that the right pitch elemental was banned, Scam was gone, and the war would be over by Christmas. Let's just put a pin in this deck for a sec and talk about our next deck, Rhinos. Rhinos ran a ton of interaction to keep ring decks at bay. They used counter magic, removal, they iced down lands, and they sometimes even used Bone Crusher Giant to get around ring's protection effect. The deck created 2 4/4s with Trample, which was already powerful but even stronger at instant speed with Violent Outburst. No ring? Slam Outburst and hold up mana for next turn. Ring? Force of Negation it, Slam Outburst, and hold up mana for next turn. Plus, cascading into it with Shardless Agent gave you a 2-turn clock, which was sometimes just enough to win matchups. And the 8 power coming at your opponent meant that the life loss from the ring was a legitimate concern. The printing of Leyline of the Guild pack allowing Scion of Draco plays and 1-mana Leyline bindings alongside Fury's banning caused Rhinos to jump in play. This combination of powerful interaction combined with instant speed cascade meant that a ban was coming. On March 11th, 2024, Violent Outburst was banned in Modern. Another bad matchup for the One Ring was gone. That leaves one more deck, Nadu. Okay, so Nadu is one of those decks that deserves a video in its own right. This was an incredibly powerful creature combo deck that saw play in Modern, Legacy, and Commander. With Nadu, a repeatable targeting effect like Shuko and Springheart Nantuko, as long as the deck can keep hitting lands with Nadu's effect, it could generate creatures to equip with Shuko, or target with an Encore. With enough Springheart Nantukos, the deck could somewhat go infinite, draw its entire deck, and win from there. You might notice that I said somewhat infinite. Unfortunately, the combo is technically non-deterministic, so it had to be played out manually. This caused players to adopt the conveyor belt technique, a both genius and funny solution to slow play. While the deck did technically run the One Ring at the end of its lifespan, it still offered a tricky matchup for those more dedicated ring decks, as the deck could just combo before the ring ever came out, or could just wait a turn for the protection effect to wear off and then win from there. The deck's plethora of tutors, the fact that Nadu replaced itself or another piece of the combo if you tried to interact with it, and cards like Delighted Halfling making it uncounterable, combined with Wizards' inaction to ban it, meant that this deck dominated Modern for a format. But fortunately, after that misery, they finally did something about it. On August 26, 2024, Nadu Winged Wisdom was banned in Modern. It would go on to be banned in Commander and is currently the talk of Legacy, where Wizards' history of not banning problematic cards when they need to may be repeating itself once again. But Nadu wasn't the only card that was banned in that announcement. Let's pull that pin out of Scam. Turns out Grief was actually good enough to keep Scam decks alive and relevant without Fury. And as it turns out, Modern players were getting very tired of the non-game potential that Grief brought to the table. So, alongside Nadu, Grief was also banned on that fateful day. Let's take a step back real quick. 2 months before, Modern Horizons 3 released. While the set brought a lot of cool cards to Modern and older formats, it also brought with it cards that made the ring even better. Before, one of the best ways to offset Ring's life loss was something like Omnath Locus of Creation. After Modern Horizons 3, Guide of Souls and Flage Titan of Fire's Fury were cheaper, synergistic life gain pieces that were also good on their own. This formed the backbone of Energy's utilization of the One Ring, combining their more traditional, grindy plan with the ability to dig themselves out of trouble if they were disrupted. But those weren't the only cards out of Modern Horizons 3 that incentivized the One Ring. Ugin's Labyrinth allowed Eldrazi ramp decks to quickly turbo out the ring, and Shifting Woodland allowed the deck to recur the draw effect every turn to get out of jams. Other big mana decks like Amulet Titan used the One Ring for the same reasons, and it started showing up more and more with better cards to support it. Then, at Pro Tour Modern Horizons 3, Javier Dominguez piloted Jeskai Control to a top 8 finish with 4 copies of the One Ring. In his article, Javier referred to the One Ring as the deck's Necro Dominance. The goal was to trade resources until you found a copy of the ring, then cast it for card advantage and protection. Outside of Tune the Narrative for the energy package and Lorien Revealed being able to play double duty, Javier left all other card draw behind outside of the One Ring. The idea of building decks in a way to just fully support the One Ring grew in the minds of players. Then, as mentioned, the Nadu and Grief bans happened. Rhinos had fallen out of the meta after its banning. Nadu and Scam were both pretty dead after the most recent bannings. And now, the One Ring was alone. A colorless value engine that could negate its own downside by playing another copy of it. Its best counters were gone, and it had a format to ruin. Why wasn't the One Ring banned? This question hit the minds of every Modern player after the August 26th announcement. The official reason from Wizards was that, while present in several decks, there is no clear the One Ring deck terrorizing Modern. The possible problems it may be causing for Modern just aren't as clear as Nadu or Grief. This reasoning, in my opinion, is a terrible one. This is not a great excuse to use for a card that is in over 40% of decks. No definitive deck doesn't matter if a card has that much prevalence, is causing this many bad play patterns, and is warping the format around it. And after the Pro Tour and Javier Dominguez's report, people started running the One Ring in anything they could. Remember how I made that unplayable video on Infect? Turns out all the deck needed was just 4 copies of the One Ring. Sideboards packed themselves with anti-ring tech. Disruptor Flute was a mainstay, able to come down before the ring and offer disruption in other matchups. In a flavor win, Cast Into the Fire was used in red decks as an answer, cleanly removing it. Despite all the answers running around and a meta quickly warping around either playing the ring or having a way to beat the ring, the meta still devolved into a format that my friend Colton lovingly refers to as pure brain rot. At its high, the One Ring boasted a 60% usage rate. You were either running the ring or playing a linear combo deck that didn't care about the ring. And with the dominance of Boros Energy, no definitive ring deck could not be used as an excuse anymore. Finally, on December 16th, 2024, the One Ring was banned in Modern, and the community was finally freed from its terror after being legal for over a year since its 42% play rate at Pro Tour Barcelona. The One Ring came from a Universes Beyond set that, for the most part, the community was pretty excited for. After a year of meta play, that excitement quickly turned to resentment. Due to how IP works, Wizards wasn't going to reprint the card, and with them backtracking on their Universes Within promises, the card's price stayed high until its twilight, pricing many players out of one of the most important cards in Modern. And some people wondered if the hesitation to ban it was, at least in part, due to its significance in The Lord of the Rings. This entire period shows a WotC that faltered when problems arose in formats and failed to properly curate them. I want to believe that they learned their lesson, but in Legacy, Nadu might just be a continuation of the story you've heard today. As for its impact, the One Ring will, like its fictional counterpart, go down in notoriety. The amount of decks it supported, its repetitive play pattern, and its eventual final rest will be remembered by the community for years to come. And while it was the One Ring to rule them all, for its crimes, it was cast into the fire, hopefully to never return.